We are going to call the February 23rd meeting at 7:04. Yeah, 7:04 to begin. If we could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Approval of agenda. What I would like to do is entertain a motion to move each one of our celebrations to right after here and go into it right after the approval of agenda.
I'll make a motion to move each one to after item B.
Second, Dana Philbin, second.
Any discussion? All those in favor can say aye.
Aye.
Anyone can say nay. Or you can abstain. Is Tony on here, by the way? Is he? I don't want to exclude him if he is somehow on here. I'm going to go ahead and say I don't see him. Therefore, everyone that is here, it was passed unanimously that we will go into each one right now. So at this point, for each one, we will have our student come forward. Once Dr. Willett has his, what he would like to say.
Okay, so, sorry for all the technology jumping around. So, my eyes aren't fantastic, but I do. Yeah. So on Thursday, February 3rd, Rob DeVica, the town fire marshal, happily informed TIS fourth grader Arina Donger that she was selected first place winner in the Tolland County, in the entire of Tolland County, for Connecticut Fire Marshals Association Fire Poster Prevention State Contest. The contest is a yearly competition sponsored by the Connecticut Fire Marshals Association, Office of the State Fire Marshal, and the Connecticut Fire Chiefs Association, and the State Board of Education, and the Connecticut Fair Plan Industry. So the theme of the contest is fire prevention, everyone, every day. And the contest is open to fourth grade and fifth grade students across the state of Connecticut. All county winner posters will be on display at the state capitol during Fire Prevention Week in October. So the winning posters will also be included in a 2023 Connecticut Fire Prevention calendar. So during a typical year, all country or county winners will be honored at the luncheon in Hartford. Family members, teachers, and local fire marshals are invited to attend. And Arnia did an amazing job on this. Let me see if I can get
I was
that.
gonna say, let's see the
I was
picture.
So she did this really cool. Hold on, I'll get it in there. Good. But we do have a certificate for you as well. So as I'm getting the computer to catch up with us here. There we go. This was the coolest poster I've ever seen. I have to tell you, it really was. It was so neat. Here we go. There, is that not the coolest thing you've ever seen? Arnia, we have this certificate for you because you did such an amazing job. And you're being honored in this community for this, and I think you're gonna win. Do you think she's gonna win? I think
Absolutely.
It's take you to create that. Looks like you did.
It would have peaked in Dr. Will in a month.
That is the coolest thing I literally have ever seen. Does anybody have any questions or any congratulations?
Do you want to tell us anything about it? No.
Do you want to share who's with you today?
That's my dad.
Congratulations. Thank you so much.
This is my older brother.
Nice. I bet you're proud of this sister.
This is my mom. Good job.
No, we-
We're so proud of you. You did such a great job. Can I give you some, can you like do self-portraits and things like that? All right.
Can we take a picture of her with you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Can we make the picture full screen? Can we- Never mind, sorry.
Yeah.
I know, I'm just gonna.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming in person. I think the whole board is so excited to have a student in here.
It's been 2 years. This is unique for us as well, so we really appreciate all the help from the teachers and the inspiration and encouragement that she has taught me. So we are really happy. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Any last words? Thank you. Okay, we will move into our approval of minutes. I will entertain a motion to approve the February 7th special meeting, February 9th special meeting, and the February 9th meeting.
I move to approve all 3 meeting minutes.
Christina Ford, second.
Any discussion on these? I don't see any. We can do a roll call vote. All those in favor can say aye.
Aye.
And that was everyone, so unanimously, Lisa. Okay, we will move on to public participation. So at this time, we have, we even got 26 participants. Look at this, we got all kinds of people. It's so lonely sometimes. So at this point, I will read the typical saying, just so that everyone knows that there is no correspondence during the public participation. It's basically you have 2 minutes. You can state your name and your address and have 2 minutes to say whatever you would like. And then board members can speak during points of information. And if you are online, if you would like to raise your hand, you just have to click on the little icon. I think it's under reactions, right? Yep, raise hand. Okay. This time, would anyone like to come and speak? Okay, we have a full room. Come on. Okay, how about online? Do we have a?
We got somebody.
Oh, we have someone. Come on. It's like the Price is Right. Come on down. You can just stand here. The owl will pick you up. And you just, like I said, you just have to state your name and your address for the record, and then
Phone
after a
numbers.
little there's the timer.
It's like my full name. Shane Schaefer, 100 Buff Cap Road. The reason why I'm here tonight, in a couple of few short weeks, we will be going on a couple years into our 15-day flattening the curve. And I believe that tonight you guys have that decision and put our kids in the best interest to take their masks off. You can either tell them to take their masks off or you make it optional. That's what we have you guys here to do. I think that the families entrust the Board of Education with our kids. However, in the past 2 years, I've seen such a decline in my son. My son goes to Birch Road, and he started in the pandemic. I shouldn't have had a 5-year-old telling me that he doesn't have friends because he can't talk to somebody because he has a mask, that he had a divider in between his desks. I've seen a decline in the way he acted that first year. We've come so far. And if we're going to start believing in science, science is not geographical. Science is everywhere. You're going to see Boston's already gotten rid of it. Numerous towns down by the shore as of February 28th are going away from all masks. They're getting away from the vaccine mandates. We don't have to show a card. And I believe that Tolland and our board should have the best interest. Make sure that our kids are going to have the best interest in mind. Give us back our kids. Let the parents decide. Give us that right. Don't tell us that we have to put our kids on the bus with a mask. Last week, walked my son out. I don't wear a mask. They wouldn't let him on the bus because he didn't have a mask. Started crying. So I had to go back in the house, get his mask, just by seeing how he looked, crying because the bus driver's like, can't get on the bus without a mask. I think we've all heard that kind of comment about getting on the bus before. And tonight, you guys have that option to let us have our kids back. These scientists, the governor's saying you guys make that decision yourselves now. You guys want to listen to the government? Listen to them. Make that decision. Make the decision to give us our kids. We have that right. If you want to send your kid to school with a mask, that's great. But don't force it. Let our kids be kids. The science has shown. Kids aren't getting sick. It's not the masks. It's not the vaccines. I'm vaccinated. I'm sure plenty of the other people in this room are vaccinated. We all can get sick. They've said that. No matter if you have the vaccine or not, kids aren't getting sick. Kids need to roll around in the dirt. Lick door handles if they want. Get sick. They need these germs. Kids are getting more sick now that the masks are coming off, because they didn't have germs for 2 years. Our kids need to be kids. They need to have that. And if there was science that this was gonna kill all our kids, I don't think any of our kids would be going to school. So listen to that. Look at what reality is. Now it's somebody's gonna give you a piece of paper, or they're gonna give you a scare tactic. Look at reality. Look at what's going on, especially in our community. People are fed up.
And I don't want to cut you off, but we did, the 2-minute timer did not go off and it should have been going off. And I just want to keep it fair for everybody.
Sure. So my last thing is, we entrust this board as a community to take care of our kids. Please do that. Give us back our kids that we can send them to school the way we want. Let us raise our kids. Let us send them there. Trust us because we know our kids. I'm sure a lot of you are parents. You don't want somebody else telling your kids what to do.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
We do not have any hands online, so anyone in the, come on.
Julie Brennan, 127 Ellington Road. Thank you for letting us speak again tonight. I also stand before you in support of mask choice and making masks optional for our kids after the 28th. We have 216 signatures on a petition for mask choice, and from people all in our community who feel the same way. And it's grown immensely in the past month. We can all agree that mask choice does not mean no mask. It's time for us parents to be able to choose what's best for our own kids. Not all kids are okay with wearing a mask. One of my daughters is perfectly fine wearing it, has had no problems, but my other daughter has struggled. She's been dealing with headaches when she gets home from school after wearing it for the 7 hours. She feels tired, fatigued. She has dark circles under her eyes when she gets home. And on days she's home, she's a different kid. No headaches, no tiredness. My son, who's in kindergarten, also struggles with wearing his mask. He has literally gone backwards in his speech. And he's been getting speech health average growth for 2.5 years. So due to the mask, he's not able to see his teacher's face or mouth movements, and he's regressed. He's also very fearful of forgetting his mask, not wearing it correctly. And at one point, he even told me he's always going to wear his mask because he doesn't want to make anyone die. And how is this okay coming from a kindergartner? Our kids have all protected the adults for 2 years. It is time to move forward. Please agree to make masks optional and parents' choice starting March 1st, and let us parents decide what's best for our families and our kids. I'd also like to say that due to restrictions lifting both here and in DC, all 8th grade kids, vaccinated or unvaccinated, should be able to attend the trip. Many of us are happy that this is going to be discussed as well. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. There's still no hands for online, so anyone else?
I'm Carrie Schneider from 360 Peter Green Road, and I'm here to advocate for all of our preschoolers. The ones that some are now calling the vulnerable due to vaccination status, when really children have been the least vulnerable throughout this entire pandemic. Yet we mask them while we go to concerts, festivals, and sporting events. And the CDC has now lowered the speech milestone standards for the first time in 2 decades. We get many of our social emotional cues and language development from seeing faces, and these masks are hurting our preschoolers more than they are helping them. It is time we stop asking our kids to protect us, and it's time we start doing what we can to protect them and their education and their mental health. Thank you.
Oh, we have one online. We got, okay, Mary Rose?
Hello, it's Mary Rose DeBerrick, 37 Ryan Road. Actually, I wanted to talk about middle school boys basketball. Our boys played their hearts out this year. They had some victories and some defeats, but they were resilient, dealing with masks, COVID setbacks, cancellations due to transportation issues, and other pandemic era challenges. The school, athletic director, coaches, Miss Estevez, families and friends made it a great middle school experience. Dealing with adversity and coming out strong made it a winning season. So I wanted to thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Mary Rose. Let's go to Reedy.
Hi, I don't have anything really well prepared, but I would just like to, 230 Grand Hill Road, sorry. I don't have anything prepared, but I just wanted to say I do believe that parents should have a choice at this stage of the game regarding masking. And there's clear evidence that it's detrimental for some kids, it may be beneficial for others, but I think we're kind of at that point when it's an endemic and we need to move on and accept that, and everyone has to do what they need to do to protect themselves and their children, but it should be a choice. It should not be mandated at this point. So I just wanted to say that and hopeful that the board will consider all of those people who are advocating in that direction.
Thank you, Reedy. Anyone in the room? Anyone in the actual real room?
Sarah Jordan Usher, 495 Mile Hill Road. I have a lot to say, so let's start the timer. So in August 2021, we decided to take the leap and homeschool our children. If you had told me a few years ago that we'd be homeschooling, I would have told you you're nuts. I have 3 preteen boys. We pulled our children because of COVID mandates, not COVID itself. We unregistered our children because of what we consider overreaching mitigation practices that were untested and implemented without any research or little case study. I personally would like to thank every internet troll that said if you don't like mandates, pull your children in homeschool, because that's exactly what we did. And I recommend it for everyone. I 100% do not agree with Ned Lamont, the state of emergency, and how our children were used as financial pawns. If it didn't become abundantly clear during these last legislative sessions, you need to wake up. I quote Democratic State Rep D'Agostino, who during the session said, "Why would we leave money on the table?" I continue to question the motive of any mandate that is used as financial incentive. No one side is happy with the idea of unmasking our children. Pro-maskers want everyone to wear a mask, no exception, greater good. Pro-choicers want the ability to decide when, where, or if at all. But what I want you to do is forget about masking. Think about something else you're passionate about. Maybe you're raising your kids vegetarian, hold strong religious beliefs, anything that you consider important to your family. Now ask yourself, would you prefer the children were forced to do something you didn't agree with, or prefer the ability to make those decisions? These mandates have forced children to do something that we as adults don't want to do. We've seen the politicians, the celebrities, everybody. We've been at restaurants, we've been at sporting events, all of us not wearing masks. Come on now, children are the last ones left. What are we waiting for? Wearing masks has become comfort objects. By definition, a comfort object is an item used to provide psychological comfort, especially in unusual or unique situations. Again, if you want your children to wear a mask, go for it. Knock yourself out, put them in a bubble. I don't care. I want my kids to have that choice too.
We will go to the virtual room. Jessica Lee.
Hi, thank you. Jessica Mead, 11 Eaton Road. So I also just wanted to talk about the masks. So I'm hoping that you guys aren't going to be putting a vote in to put masks in place and that they're going to expire on February 28th. Everybody made a lot of good points. I just want to point out that I don't think any board member, any teacher, principal, should have the right to tell a parent what's best for their child's health. So I hope you guys keep that in mind when you're making your decisions. I don't think the kids should be used as shields to protect others or be treated less than, which they have for the past 2 years. It should be the parent's choice to make the decision for their children. They are legally responsible for their child. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Go to our actual room. Oh. Hello, little baby.
Noelle would like to speak.
How old is Noelle?
She's 7 months. So I'm Christina Melanson, 196 Lair Road in Tolland. I have 3 children. One is currently in 2nd grade, so he's been dealing with this since middle of his kindergarten year. So his only experience so far has been, the craziness that COVID is, and I would attest that it has impacted him dramatically. As many of these other nice people have come in and also said, I have 2 more children that will be going through, and right now we're faced with, my 2nd child will be 2 in another month. So if this didn't change, I would be tasked with trying to mask a 2-year-old and train them to jump through these hoops as well. But what I also heard Sarah say, when it comes to the financial piece of this, right, we all heard in the state of Connecticut that there is ample money coming through the state because of this state of emergency. We have $30 million in food stamps a month coming into the state, $180 million in rent assistance that they don't want to expire. So there is a big price tag on keeping this thing going. But I don't think it should be at the expense of our students and the only demographic that still has the ability to be controlled by the mandates of the state. Everybody else has kind of made the decisions for themselves as they're allowed to by the freedoms of this country. They're the only demographic left that has this group, and the state has the ability to say, this is what these kids have to endure in order to use the public services provided to them. I don't think that's fair. So I hope that you consider that. And then as things move forward, and things get harder in the fall, right? And you have to come back and make these decisions. I don't think that we should be moving back to punishing this demographic of children that can't make that decision for themselves. Thank you.
We do not have any new hands on the online, therefore the. Come on up.
Jessica Susie, 108 Lawler Road. I just want to remind all of you that children are not one size fits all. They do not have cookie cutter needs. Every child is unique. They deserve policies that best serve each of their needs. Many families and students struggled greatly over the last few years. Their individualized needs have been ignored to support and protect the greater cause. Some students managed and were fortunate enough to get by, while others seemed to conquer their daily challenges flawlessly. You see, everybody is different. What I would like to know, after you reinstate parental choice, what are we going to do to move forward? How can we as parents, the Board of Ed, and a community repair the damage that has been done from these mandates? My 5th grader frequently talks about how she missed her first dance with her dad. Current 8th graders are being excluded from a school trip with questionable effort on making it work for all students. Every grade level can make a list of ongoing negative experiences that they have faced since the beginning of this pandemic. What are we going to do to repair that damage? To make school and trips inclusive, to offer equal opportunities that our children can actually look forward to? We have the chance to re-offer experiences to some grades and to work together on fostering positive memories. Tolland, we can do better than ignoring the damage. I really hope that the decisions that are made here tonight will mark the beginning of a new ending to our story and a brighter, more inclusive future for all of our students. Thank you.
I don't, still, there's the Jessica, so let's keep going into our room. Anyone else? No? Everyone good?
Is there time to talk after you?
We have
spoken
the
and made your
points of
decisions?
public participation all the way at the end, another one. So it's at the end of the meeting though. I mean, you can speak now and you can speak later. We're
I don't really
not.
decide on things, so I can't argue. I said it was fine.
Well, it's open if you would like it. You could take it now, you could take it later, both.
Or both.
Okay, is there anyone else online? I don't want to miss you if you, for some reason, couldn't figure out how to raise your hand. That's under the reactions. Raise hand. Otherwise, it's going once, going twice. We will close out our public participation. Thank you for everyone to talk. Okay, at this time. Oh, there's a person joining?
I'm just joining.
Okay, just want to make sure, sorry.
Am I missing something?
Nothing, never mind.
We're good.
I just didn't want to join during public participation, but I'd like to join
Oh, okay.
virtually. But I don't want to interrupt anybody.
Well, we are going to move on to the correspondence, and that goes to Jacob.
All right, so we had another high volume correspondence this meeting. We had an email expressing disappointment that the board had an executive session during the February 9th meeting between public participation and the rest of the regular agenda items. The author asked the board to hold executive sessions after the regular meeting is concluded. We had an email asking for a statement from the board and or the superintendent on what the district will do with regards to masking if the decision is left to them. An email congratulating the board for passing a budget but expressing disappointment that the vote wasn't unanimous. An email making a formal complaint that a district employee is allegedly in violation of policy 4041 regarding social media. An email asking if the board is still considering having a Washington DC field trip at the high school for those 8th graders who missed out on the trip due to COVID-19 regulations. An email asking what plans are being made for the class of 2025 and 2024 with regards to the Washington DC trip. An email asking about remaining quarantine requirements for unvaccinated students who are interested in attending a trip to Washington DC. An email alleging that some board members have acted unprofessionally on social media. The author believes board members should remain politically neutral and not express opinions on matters until a vote is taken. An email asking when a decision will be made on masking for Tolland Public Schools. An email asking the board to move the last day of school to June 24th, regardless of future snow days. The author is concerned that the late end to the school year will conflict with vacations and other summertime activities. An email asking the board to consider a range of factors, including speech and emotional development, and the risks people assume from other viruses, and considering whether to put in place a local mask mandate or let it expire. An email sharing remote learning standards for the upcoming school year. Additionally, we had 4 emails that were generally in favor of a mask mandate, 6 emails opposed to a mask mandate, 2 emails asking whether the Tolland schools consider putting in place a bus tracking system, and then 6 emails asking that all students be allowed to attend Washington DC trip regardless of vaccination status.
Thank you, Jacob. At this point, I will open up to board members for points of information. As you guys know, you just have to raise your hand. I have a few, but I'll go ahead. Go ahead.
Try short, but it's not short. Thank you all for coming out to speak. you don't know me, I've been quite active on social media. It's hard for me not to express opinions, and maybe I should apologize for that, but I've been advocating to take the masks off the kids, or making a choice since August. And I got a lot of flack for that, but there's a lot of reasons behind that, and some of you have shared them, and I have some of my own. One big thing, back in October last year, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and I got to read this one, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry and the Children's Hospital Association declared a national emergency in mental health, in children's mental health, due to the pandemic. Not masks, but to the pandemic in general. And so that had an effect on me, because I saw the effect on my own son. I've seen the effect on others' kids, you know, and I hate to bring my own son into this, but, you know, he was fine at first. And then I just progressively saw him get more and more withdrawn. You know, and that's just an N of one. You know, I know that's not a scientific study, it's just what I've seen. As of right now, there are 0 hospitalizations in Tolland County. There have been 2 deaths per 100,000 in the 0 to 9 age group. There's been 4 deaths per 100,000 in the 10 to 19 age group. That's for the entire state, not for just Tolland. I believe it's time to move forward and stop harming our kids. What's best for one might harm another. I think someone said it's not black and white, you know, not all, it's not, kids are not cookie cutter. So I do believe in parental choice. I'm also a registered nurse, so I do believe in the efficacy of masking when it's a proper mask and it's needed. We need to do the least amount of harm. So today, yesterday and today, I listened to Shipman and Goodwin's webinar. They're our lawyer. I listened to it twice. Because as you know, with lawyers, it can be quite difficult to understand what they're saying and how that applies to you. And I'm going to forward, if you guys are interested, because this is going to be an ongoing conversation, I'll forward you the replay. It was great. And this is what they said. We are transitioning to routine disease prevention. Instead of a pandemic response, we are moving towards a standard public health approach to management and control of respiratory viral disease, similar to influenza. So the model includes recommending vaccination, supporting students who choose to wear masks. And I think that's a big part. You know, I did reach out to some parents that wanted to keep masks. And a lot of that came from, you know, the fear of the bullying that could potentially happen if they're wearing a mask and other kids aren't. So we as a board have to recognize, you know, that could happen. And then testing, masking, following illness and isolation and quarantines. I think because there's going to be guidelines around that, you know, parents have to recognize too that, you know, if you choose, you know, certain things for vaccination status, there may still be quarantines. You know, I don't know. I mean, this is all up in the air. You know, there's still information coming, but, you know, our choices could affect other things. So that's the parent's choice, not mine. So I have 2 asks for tonight of my fellow board members, because I have to ask. I would like to ask this board to issue a clear and concise statement that reflects that masks will be optional on February 28th. I would like to also ask the board to direct the superintendent to plan for a second trip the exact same week as the first trip for the kids who weren't allowed to go to DC because of their vaccination status. They should not have to be lumped into a joint trip with kids a year older than them at a later date. So those are my 2 asks, and then a few follow-ups. And what I did in regards to the field trips, I emailed the policy chair. I think we should revisit field trip policy. The policy hasn't been updated since 2004, so it'd be a good look, you know, for the board to take a look at it and, you know, see what the requirements are in there. And I think the bus tracking is a great idea for whoever sent that email in. So thank you all for listening and thank you all for coming.
I've got more to say about masking later, but I'll just say something fairly brief because we have everyone here and I don't know how long we'll talk about graduation. So first, I sympathize with so many parents and students, in fact, that I've heard testimony from, and I've heard testimony on behalf of the parents for the last 2 years of my college career. I graduated last year. I was learning remotely, and I know exactly how it feels to have your entire educational experience turned upside down and be robbed of those sorts of experiences. And I feel especially bad for the youngest kids. You know, when you have like a 5-year-old or a 7-year-old, you're talking about a very significant portion of their life that they've spent in constant fear, and in many cases, I would say unjustified fear. And there needs to be a balance when it comes to that sort of risk. So to everyone who's written in, and the many others who agree silently, I'll just say now, I would not vote for a mask mandate or a permanent mask policy for the district if one is proposed. It's critical that we listen to the concerns raised by parents with regards to their children. And although I do believe that people should be allowed to wear masks if they'd like, they should be allowed to do so without harassment, it's time that we allow everyone to assess their own risks and make their own health decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob.
I just wanted to quickly thank everyone who spoke tonight, those online and those of you in the room. I know you're taking time away from your children and families to be here and to be online, so I'm very grateful for it. Thank you. Please always advocate for your children, and thank you for coming to speak with us directly.
So something not a lot of folks know about me is the impact this pandemic has had on my educational experience. So most of you may not know, I'm not in school currently. And that's, as Jacob just said, mostly due to the fact that I was all online and almost lost my mind because I was all online. And so it's a lot deeper than I just wanted to take some time off of school and work so I could continue coaching and doing this. So Jacob, you made a good point. It was tough. It was tough. I get it. We all have challenges from here and from there, but that was my challenge personally, is getting through not high school, college, calculus and labs and it was difficult. And so I can't imagine doing that. My little leaguers, I can't imagine it. So now we have all the data. We've got all the facts. I think it's time for us to make a decision one way or another. And so thank you all for showing up. I appreciate every single one of you. I'm sorry I couldn't respond to every one of you. But again, thank you for showing up, and I'll see you Saturday for basketball.
Anyone else? Okay. I'm going to touch upon a couple of points that are not on the agenda. In terms of the bus tracking system, I think it's a great idea, but I'm sure it's going to cost us money, and that's got to be a part of probably the contract, I'm assuming. Am I?
Yeah, you have to add the feature.
And that is coming up, so just, that is something that everyone's interested in. Just know it's probably going to cost us an arm and a leg. Just saying, because the contracts are always like that. And snow days. Now, I'm not saying we're having a snow day Friday. I'm not saying that. But if we do, I think we're going way into summertime now. I mean, camps start that week that we have school finishing up. I do know that there's something about 180 days, and we do have 182 days on the calendar.
Right.
So technically, we could only go to.
Yes, if the board wanted to do that, you'd vote to do that, and then I would go to the bargaining unit and talk to them. And if they agreed, then we're all set. I don't anticipate people not agreeing with that.
Okay, well,
So if
that's
you wanted to
something for all
go,
of
you
us
would
to.
vote to reduce it to 180 student school days.
180.
If you wanted to
versus the
take 2 days
182.
off, you would vote to reduce the school year to 180 days from 182.
And that would even, so that next, so say we have a snow day Friday. I'm not saying that we are, but if we do, because people automatically think that that's gonna bump us to the June 27th, right? So, you know, I think we're really starting to, it's really starting to go into family, you know, whether summer camps or whatever. So this is probably going to be on the agenda coming up here. I just want to throw it out because we did have that conversation, and then, like I said, I kind of looked at the forecast for this week, and it's a possibility. That's all I'm saying. But, you know, they always are wrong with 50% of the time. So I just, like I said, I look at the calendar and I'm looking and I'm like, we're going very late. And then at that point, when you have students in the heat, and it's gonna be a little bit chaotic. So I just wanted to mention that, and I'll save the rest of my stuff for later. Dr. Willett, did you have anything to add on that?
No, just, I was gonna mention that about the 180, 182, but other than that.
Okay, well, something to think about, guys.
Sorry, Ashley.
Yeah.
Is that something, when would that need to be decided on? Is that something
Well, I
in
think
our
we can
next
discuss
meeting?
that at next meeting.
Gotcha.
You know, I think that everyone feel comfortable having that discussion.
Right.
I think that would be an add to that meeting.
Gotcha. I was just making sure. it
I
wasn't
think
like a
it's sooner than
major-
later,
Right,
personally,
right.
I think we
right.
should make that conversation happen.
Gotcha.
So next meeting would be perfect. And I feel that. Okay, oh, student representative. So Emily and Natalie, how are you ladies?
Good. So not much has been going on in student council. The only thing we've been doing is making short videos and posting it on the morning announcements for Black History Month.
Great.
That's really all we have. We haven't done that much.
Well, you guys started a new semester.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
You're still collecting bottle caps.
Yes, that's still going, that's been going on for like.
Yeah. It's been going on since the beginning of the year.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you guys want to chime in on the controversial topic we were discussing tonight? You can take the fifth if you want, but I thought I'd ask some students.
I just think personally, as people I've talked to, at least I haven't talked to anyone like outside high school, but I think they think that they're at an age for themselves, they should decide. Because I know a lot of people feel comfortable taking it off, but some people don't. But I think they want it to be a personal choice. That's all I've heard from people. Yeah.
And spring sports sign up is happening.
Yes.
The only reason why I know is because I paid the $200. Perfect. Anyone else have anything? No? Okay, thank you ladies so much for coming, and feel free to leave anytime that you want. Okay, so let's go to our superintendent's report. So let's do graduation, and we do have Mr. Tolland with us today.
Principal of the high school here.
Where would you like me to stand? I've never been here in person.
You've never been in person?
Only been
Well, we
virtual.
won't fight, don't worry.
Want me to stand here?
Yeah, that's perfectly fine.
I'm gonna just get right into it.
Just jump
Yeah.
right in.
Go for it.
We're really here just to provide some information about the end of the year, mainly graduation. Dr. Willett has some items that he potentially will share. So we're gonna look to have graduation on Friday, June 24th. All right, so that's right now, that's the last day of school. So Friday, June 24th at 6 o'clock. We're gonna plan for the Tolland High School gymnasium as we have in previous years, pre-pandemic. And as normal, each graduate will receive 8 tickets. We have an image of our gown that I shared with Dr. Willett that he can show.
Is this something different?
So we have gone forward with a gown that is now blue with a white stripe down the middle. One of the main messages that I've promoted since I've been here is that we are all Eagles, one unified school community. And when you enter the high school as a 9th grader, you become an Eagle. When you exit and graduate, you still are an Eagle, and you always will be one. And blue and white is a symbol of pride for us. It really represents the unity within our school community. And I had Ms. Steed, our commencement coordinator, speak with our class officers, and they were on board with it. So we're going to move forward with the gown that is blue with the white stripe down the middle. So that's this year. I also provided an example program to Dr. Willett. We'll follow a traditional program that we typically do. Honestly, even last year, even though it was at a different venue, we followed a typical traditional program. So that's not going to change. And, you know, really from there, we're just excited to have a normal end of the year. I think the students are in regards to this event. So we're excited about it. So I just wanted to share briefly about that and just the information we currently have. And ask if you guys have any questions or any thoughts. I can take those now.
I'm excited to see the new gowns, because I mean, there always was such a division with, you know, with people on the right, so I think that it'll be neat to have everyone, like you said.
Yep.
Under the same thing.
Absolutely.
Any questions?
So is the 24th then set in stone? Has that been communicated to the students yet?
Not yet. This is
Okay.
really the first time I'm formally communicating it. I've talked to Dr. Willett about it over the past couple of weeks. And as long as we feel good about that date, which we do, I'll start to communicate it to all stakeholders.
All right. I don't want to start anything with this question, so.
So now you want.
Okay, so I was just curious because I heard a lot of good feedback about the Dunkin' Donuts Park graduation we did, and this one, we're back at the high school for this one. I was just wondering if anyone had looked into keeping it there at the park. I know there was.
Well, that's, we did that in the pandemic year.
For that
For
one.
those reasons. It starts at 15,000.
Oh, okay.
And then on top of that would be other.
Mhm.
So generally, no, because we have a facility that, you know, non-COVID, we can run it in our facilities very well. So.
Yeah. Okay, I understand that the price tag of it. I just knew a lot of people like
Yeah.
it. So I didn't know if there was something to that,
Yeah,
you
for
know.
sure. No. So,
Okay.
It's nice that you came in to talk to us. Thank you.
Yeah, in person.
I love seeing the administrators. I was going to talk about the Dunkin' Donuts Stadium because I was going to make a joke. You know, I pitched one of my fits last year about having an outdoor graduation, and wouldn't you know, it was 96 degrees. And Sophia and I were on the Jumbotron. So I just had a question about the indoor graduation though.
Sure.
Are the students limited to how many guests they can bring outside of the pen? Like, is it back to normal? They can bring
Yeah,
them-
so in a normal year, it's 8 guests per graduate.
Okay.
And that's what we're going forward with.
Perfect.
So that hasn't changed.
Thank you.
Is it still same policy? Like I know my family, you get more than 8 tickets and then we got a big family. So is it still a possibility for kids to, you know, if they don't have enough, say a kid only uses 4 tickets, they still, you know, hand them to other students and let them invite more family, or is that with COVID involved? Is that?
I mean, I think typically the message is that we hold true to the 8 per graduate. What families decide to do on their own, you know, is really up to them. But, you know, we only have a certain amount that we can allow as far as capacity, you know, and that's the big thing. So our message is 8, you know, and then if families decide to swap tickets, I mean, they can potentially do that. But typically we really just promote that. Good question, though. This is actually my first in-person graduation in the gym, so.
Oh, gotcha.
It's kind of
That puts it in
first for
perspective.
me. First one.
We've had more than you.
Do we have or need a backup plan in case of numbers going up?
well, you know, what would probably end up happening in that scenario is we would be directed to limit it to X number of people. That would be what would happen. So we would have to make adjustments to our programming in that case. That's hopefully unlikely, but that would be what would happen. They would say you're limited to X number inside, and then we'd have to follow. And
So what I
we-
hear is a task force forming.
What's the procedure if a kid, so obviously quarantining is still happening. What's the procedure for that? I mean, are they going to be incorporated into the graduation virtually somehow, or how would that sort of work?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully that's the last case scenario we're thinking about, but we would accommodate a family no matter what to make sure they have the most valuable experience they could, if that happened, it really would be on a case-by-case basis leading up. We would have some plans in place for different scenarios, similar to what we did for like final exams, because that we had students who were out on quarantine or out up toward. So we had different tiers of planning that was involved to make sure that students had a fair chance to do well on exams. So similar to this, we would just have different tiers of planning for families to make sure they still had a fair and a memorable experience.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I just want to say thank you for coming.
Yeah.
It's nice to hear from you, and I'm excited about the new change.
Yep.
Change of pacey, you're like, this is my first one. If I person, we're gonna change it all up.
I noticed that the gym still says congrats to the class of 2019. I'm assuming that's gonna be updated.
That will come down.
Okay, good.
That was
We
up
need
there
our
for the
artillery
entire.
then.
Yeah.
So we have to spend $80,000 to change it to 22.
Now we'll get that changed, absolutely.
Underneath the scoreboard.
Oh, yeah.
It still says congrats class 2000.
I got no complaints. That's my class. So, congrats, guys.
So thank you very much for coming.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll probably have you back in when
Sure,
prom
absolutely.
time comes around and
Yep.
end of year activities, all the fun stuff.
Yeah.
So thank you. So the big presentation, June 24th is graduation.
Thank you, Mr. Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's go to H Street masking and pandemic considerations.
So there's a lot of information that came out very recently. And most of you are aware of it, so I won't go over every bit of this nitty-gritty, but the bottom line is that February 28th, there are no longer the executive orders or emergency powers keeping the masking mandates in place with the exception that the Connecticut State Department of Education and DPH have the right to or are given the power to reinstitute masking up until June 30th. So essentially, all mask mandates come off on the 28th, but they have been given that authority should they decide to do that. In the meetings that I've been in, the only situation that I was told would result that would cause such a thing would be hospitalizations. There's been other communication around that, but at the time, the commissioner of the DPH said in a meeting to superintendents that it would have to be a high level of hospitalizations or community hospitalizations for that to be considered. Otherwise, they will likely not be reinstituting anything. So essentially, because there will no longer be the mandate, the board does not need to take action in order for masks to be a choice. So families can make a choice after February 28th. The only action that you would have to take as a board or any board would have to take is if you wanted to impose a mandate. So we don't have any board policies here that were pandemic related with respect to masks. Some districts put policies in. We did not. We followed the DPH and EHHT guidelines and followed the states, and DPH's orders on it. Now those are gone, so there's no need to rescind anything. Nothing existed. It was basically because of those orders that was happening. So tonight, you really don't have to take action for it to end. If you take no action at all, then mask mandates end. And there are exceptions. Buses are there's a federal transportation requirement, so buses may still need to have masks on now. We're still looking for clarification, but the last report that I had on that was that masks would be required on buses, school buses. The other requirement would be a person coming back from being COVID positive. A person can return on the 6th day from a COVID positive test if they're fever free for 24 hours. And if they are showing, very mild symptoms, they can return on the 6th day. Somebody who's COVID positive must wear a mask on the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th through the 10th day. So those two conditions were the only two conditions in which someone would be having to wear a mask right now. Otherwise, there would be choice. So that's where that ended the last information that I've had on it. So you really don't need to take any action tonight for masking to become a choice for most circumstances. The other thing is that EHHD, as the local health district, could assert, let's say that if we had classroom spread that was concerning to them, the EHHD as an arm of the DPH could also instruct us to then do something. And that something might be masking or some other bit, some other thing to control what they're calling an outbreak now. So they're changing their terminology and using terms like outbreak. So if there's a localized outbreak, the EHHD might instruct the district to do something. And they have the power through the DPH to do that through June 30th once again. So my recommendation to the board at the time was not, you don't need to do anything about that right now for masking to become optional for families. And the only, and we would just have to see, the only condition for that would be if EHHD or DPH orders us to do something.
Let me just ask you a question. In terms of the federal public transportation about having masks on bus. Now, I would assume that the way that it's written, and I don't know if we have to ask Jessica about this, is it would be for public transportation in terms of like a metro, in terms of, going into cities where they have, actual transit versus school children on the bus that they're going to the same school. Are we 100% sure that that is how it's written?
In every meeting so far, that's what I was told. So I have something reaching out to them to see if we can get further clarification, but there has been no ambiguity about what they've said with respect to that. So that's the, I'm looking between now and the 28th to get an answer from our representation on that. And maybe something will change between now and the 28th. Possibly there's another meeting, in between the two times, but I'll be asking for clarification from our legal representative as well. So far, it has been stated that those are the two exceptions to masking being optional. The COVID positive 10-day quarantine, requirements, and when I say quarantine requirements, the 10-day masking requirement for someone who's COVID positive, and then the buses. And a lot of people are pushing back on the buses, so it's maybe something will happen between now and the 20th.
I just wanted to clarify that. This time, I think we can go around and just tell what your thoughts are, and we can go from there. Would you like to have anything that you already said in points of information?
Of course I do. Shipman on their webinar did talk about the federal transportation. They seem to not have an answer and they were looking for more information. But I feel like I read somewhere that it said not applicable to school buses from the CDSC. So I'm gonna have to review my notes on that. That's fine. Frequently asked question number 4 on the webinar was, it was about EHHD and their right to impose a mandate. And it was very confusing what they were saying, so similar to what Dr. Willett was saying, that the conversation has to continue because the executive orders go through the 30th. So EHHD, to me, continues to recommend masks. And I mean, that just makes me fearful that they're gonna undo anything that we do here tonight. So yeah, I'm gonna go back and listen to FAQ number 4 for the 3rd time tomorrow. But I think the conversation has to be ongoing through June because there's a lot of changes and it was a lot of information to take in the 24 hours before this meeting. And then there was a lot of talk about contact tracing, and I didn't understand, I guess this is a question for you. Are we can't go back to contact tracing in the schools, are we? All right, thank God. Okay, that's all I had. You know where I stand.
Yeah, I mean, the thing on that is the unvaccinated still have to follow the quarantine directive. That's the only other piece that we don't contact trace.
Well, that was one of my questions. Yeah, I guess the other thing is clarity on the school bus. So I'll just reiterate Christina's question and Ashley's. Because it does seem to have different information from our different sources we're getting guidance from. I guess, and I don't know if this is putting the cart before the horse, but I guess we need to talk about what we're expecting our educators to do.
Yes, good point.
Right, so if Susie's mom wants her to wear a mask and Sally's dad doesn't want Sally to wear the mask, how are we following that, or how are we holding our educators to that? Or I guess, again, and this is a cart before the horse, it's a question, I guess.
Well, in that scenario, that's between Susie's mom and dad. We don't get involved with that. So like if Susie, mom says wear it, dad says don't. that's
I'm sorry, no,
family.
not this, they're two different parents, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Family A and family B.
Sorry.
Sorry, I probably should have said family A and family B. So family A's child. Sorry, that's a big problem at home, right? Okay, no, family A wants their child, to have the option of the mask and not go to school without a mask. And then family B wants their child to wear the mask. It's a lot to be expecting our educators to keep up with. That's what I'm talking about. And again, I don't know if this is the cart before the horse with it.
Yeah.
How do we have the backwoods don't work on our screen?
That's because we have a creative person.
That's pretty impressive. I was looking, I'm like, why is there like a thing on here? I'm like, oh, do you have the?
Someone shared their screen.
Well, that's fun, so let's get going.
That's what I had.
We're gonna start our meeting again, thank you.
I appreciate.
Numbers.
Sorry.
No, my two questions were asked. That was my big question on how the staff would be charged with handling it. Via the nurses, staff, or educators in the classroom. Definitely needs to be discussed on how it's handled in the respective schools. And then, but other than that, I think you've given us clear direction on who's allowed to make the decision or what kind of guidance is under certain respective purview. So I'm pretty crystal clear where we stand.
I just don't believe that there's anything for the board to do at this time. I think it should be optional and it should be a family's preference.
My opinion hasn't changed since I spoke 5 minutes ago, but I guess I'll just take this time to say I kind of feel frustrated with Eastern Highlands Health District sometimes, especially with quarantine requirements with unvaccinated students. I think that regulations like that are going to cause several problems. They already are, especially with regards to the Washington DC trip that we're going to talk about next. I completely get the whole, we don't want children who choose to wear masks to be bullied or harassed. That's absolutely true, but things like this against unvaccinated students will lead to like the same sort of problems. So I don't know, we as a board can't tell the EHHD what to do. That's not how it works, but anything we as a board can do to have conversations about that and potentially other board members feel that way to advocate for or against rules like that would be very nice. That's it.
Hey, Griffin.
So I don't really have anything new than what everybody else has said. I've, been saying it again with Christina since August, that I think it's time for a parent choice and it's time to unmask the kids. But I am concerned about EHHD. I mean, since day one of this pandemic, they have had this narrative of we're going to kill grandma. And, I worry that they're going to send in this directive that we should or have to, I'm not sure. So I think we really need to go see too, Christina, if you said it, like, can they override the DPH? So if the DPH isn't giving the directive, can the individual local force us to make a mandate? I'm not sure, and I don't like that and agree with that because I think that they're overly conservative. I think they have been since the beginning. That's just my own personal view of that, but I am absolutely against any mask mandate. And just in thinking about what you were saying, Dana, I don't think we can task our teachers with making sure. I think that's between a child and their parents. I mean, I think back to when I would send my kid with with carrots for lunch, thinking that, okay, maybe he's gonna eat them. Like, I would never expect the teacher to say, your mom sent carrots, you need to eat the carrots. So I think that that's just gonna have to be, if a parent feels strongly that their kid needs to be masked, I think that's between them, and they have to talk to their kid and have their kid follow their own family rules. So that would be my thought. I think that would be really unfair to expect the teachers to have a list of who's masked and who's not. So that's just my thought on that, but thank you. Jen?
I think my only one new thing to add is just, I think that the bus situation is confusing and might continue to be confusing. So I don't know if we could possibly maybe give bus drivers disposable masks at the, you know,
Yeah,
at the
they
beginning,
have
so
them.
that children wouldn't be turned away. Okay. And then kind of following up about, you know, staff enforcing children to wear a mask, will they also be in charge of enforcing, like, children who do come back from those 5 to 10 days? Would that be a staff member who had to tell them to keep a
Yeah,
mask
so,
on?
sorry, I was busy trying to figure that one out, but, no, the teacher's not gonna enforce, you know, the family situation, the family chooses, child wears it or doesn't, the teacher won't enforce that unless, and I don't think it would be good to ask, because there's so many kids and so many. But, if we were directed, it would be in the similar situation that we've been in the middle of the pandemic. If we're directed to do something and we don't comply or show due diligence and compliance, then we have a problem, and that's a problem we don't want to have. So we'll have to figure that, you know, cross that bridge when we get to it. I hope we don't have to ever cross that bridge. But, you know, that would be the only thing where we would be trying to figure
How
it
is this
out.
possible?
I don't know. It's not shared. So whoever is doing that, you're going to prevent us from showing anything else tonight. So no one is going to have the benefit of seeing any other attachment. So whoever's doing that, I would, you know, respectfully ask you to stop.
So that's answered the question. Anything else, Jen?
I lost my train of thought. I don't think so for now.
Jaden.
I haven't much to say, other than what I've said already and what everyone said here, which is let's move forward. However we move forward, let's do it together. And so I'm excited to move forward. That's the other part. So, but not much else to add.
Okay. Yeah.
Just to let you guys know, so I actually reached out. I have a couple of teacher friends in some other states, and it was South Carolina, Louisiana, and Indiana. None of them have mask mandates in schools, and all did say to me that their students are required on the bus. So I do think it falls under, I think it's the TSA. I did read also that TSA requirement is up on March 18th. Now, that being said, I've also read that the airlines, some of the airlines unions, I think the flight attendant unions, are pushing to continue the mask mandates on airplanes. But I would hope that the TSA might break apart and it won't be just a very generic mandate for all transportation over the entire country, and that maybe they'll recognize that, I want to say Connecticut might be one of the last states to finally be lifting the mask mandate. So maybe they'll recognize that if the students, if none of them are wearing the masks in schools, hopefully they'll take away the mask mandate on these school buses. So I just kind of wanted to let you guys know that, yeah, my girlfriend in South Carolina said her students walk off the bus and they pull off their masks.
And that was March 18th.
March 18th.
Because once again, not by implementing any sort of policy, it goes back and it would fall back onto, it would be optional for kids if they were going to wear them on a bus or not. Because our whole time is that we follow the mandates. So by doing that, there is no longer a mandate. So we're going to go back to having masks be optional for students. And so at least we have some sort of date to follow for the federal in terms of buses for the masks, because if they still need them for that, then we're going to have to just kind of keep our eyes peeled and hear what's happening with Shipman if they somehow see that it's maybe it's only for Metro, for actual public, you know, in the town, where their neighbors pretty much going on a bus. So in terms of that, I think we are all set, because we're not imposing anything, we're not doing anything else.
Can I say one thing, Ashley?
Yeah.
To be clear, I agree with you 100%. I don't think the educators should be tasked with verifying it. That's what I was asking if our school system was going to require that, because I don't think educators need to have another thing on their plate. So I didn't want you to misunderstand, because I don't think that they should be tasked with that either. So I just wanted to.
Perfect. Dr. Willett?
I think I figured out how to stop that. But anyway, sorry, specific question. I mean, from the standpoint, just speaking.
No, anything to just add? into
No,
the
I
last
think
conversation?
you've all done, you've been through a lot, right now, we're in a situation where you have followed all the rules. You follow the HHD and the DPH, you've done everything that you've been asked to do, we all have. Those rules no longer require masking. So at this point, just as we followed the DPH, in its process before in CSDE, it makes sense then to, without the mandate, not continue to do that at this time.
Okay, perfect.
Please haven't said yet.
Is it Monday they don't have to wear masks or Tuesday?
Monday.
Okay, that's what I thought, right?
No, I'm not gonna.
Oh.
More importantly, tomorrow's
Oh, tomorrow's pajama.
pajama day is tomorrow for Charles. The calendar, I can't keep up with it.
Well, now that you say it, so the 28th, I have June in here. I was looking at.
I would say as of the 28th is sort of what I
What are
interpret
the
as.
staff and teachers doing? Is that? is it
Their
something
No,
we should
I
discuss?
can't, so I can't, I understand what you're saying, I can't answer it
Okay.
unless.
Let me ask. What are staff?
So what are our staff in terms of math?
So essentially, they have the same choice that you do, or that everyone else does. It's the same general rule for everyone. Now it's choice. The key factor now is, there's been so much around this that, and I'll send out a couple of things on it, that we just have to make sure that compassion is a big part of how we move forward, because obviously there's been a lot on TV, there's been a lot of things. There will be kids that need to wear a mask, and there will be kids that are coming off a pandemic, COVID positive that need to wear. So we just don't want people being picked on or bullied for that. So we all have to be very careful that at home and everywhere else, we're giving the message that, there is going to be situations, some people will be wearing them. We should be very sensitive to that, and, we'll probably have to be quite overt at making those kinds of statements, because there's so much around this, So we just want to be very direct, that, we support everybody's choice, no matter what that is.
So I know there's been a lot of confusion with the correspondence and no offense, Dr. Willett, there's just a lot of information to read. So I'll go back to my ask at the beginning, if we could just put out a clear and concise statement from the board that says, we did not vote to implement a mask mandate, and masks will be optional on February 28th, which is the same date as the Office of Early Childhood. So actually, that's a question. Our preschoolers, is it optional for them too? Do we follow the Office of Early Childhood?
I would say all district, if
Oh,
it's
okay.
otherwise directed.
Okay, so everyone's inclusive of that. Just 2 sentences. If you have any questions or you do have concerns, please call me.
And we can make that a superintendent Facebook thing.
Yes.
I mean, I think that usually the last bulletins, I'll make it a separate thing from the bulletin and include it on the bulletin. But it's, I was waiting for this meeting before I did anything else with respect to communicating.
Oh, that's
You
perfect.
could text 2 sentences too. That would be
Yes.
everybody. They love
You're
that.
blessed.
Everybody loves getting a text like that.
Do that, we can include it
Don't
all.
call. Don't call.
No, I said include it all, the text. I will not call.
Go ahead, Jamie.
Is there, Dr. Willett, is there a reason to not hold off, but is there a possibility it could happen instead of February 28th, March 1st, or February, not 27th, because that's Sunday, but March 1st, March 2nd, because I know you said there's some sort of meeting between now and February 28th.
And I do not think anything further will be imposed on us at this time. I don't anticipate that happening. I think what's going to happen between now and then is potential clarity on the transportation. That would be I think that's what we're all kind of waiting for, and no one's been super clear. about that, except that the DPH did, that the meetings I've been in, they were straightforward about it had to be on transport. So as Ms. Plord points out, other legal entities are not being, there's some ambiguity about that, but with ambiguity, what we're being directed to do, we follow through with unless, we don't want to get on the bad, in the bad situation with that. So we would, our due diligence means asking, please put on the masks, that type of thing. That's about as far as I would see our district enforcement being, is that we do our due diligence. That's what we're required to do, is due diligence. So we would ask, please put on your mask.
Gotcha. And I'd say, Christina, I support that idea. It's a simple message that goes out to folks that clearly states what they are and aren't allowed to do, I guess. So yeah, I'm on board with that. Cool.
Okay, so you have your marching orders on that. Are you ready for DC? Because now you're popping in here and I'm not sure exactly what you're showing.
Go to the bulletin.
Well, everyone sees your bulletins.
2 sentences.
Short and sweet.
Where it is, I navigate things. So what we're talking about.
So let's go on to the Washington DC conversation.
Okay. So, basically, probably best thing is to open it up to questions at some point here from you, but H4 from October 13th is basically still where we're at with DC, unfortunately, because the reasons behind the process, and it was very difficult because it obviously has to start so much earlier than the trip itself, that the tour company, to my understanding, can't add people now. It has to be kind of executed based on the timeline that that exists for that trip. So the conditions are not, from the standpoint of why, different, because the unvaccinated students still have to go into quarantine. And so what could happen potentially is that if somebody is symptomatic, there's an option, somebody can give themselves a test, that type of thing, but if they don't, they have to be presumed positive. And if they're presumed positive, if I'm a vaccinated individual and I am presumed positive, and Ms. Plord is vaccinated as well, she doesn't have to quarantine. But if she's unvaccinated, she does have to quarantine. And anyone around that person who's unvaccinated has to quarantine. So the potential for that trip being pretty horrible for that person being quarantined, that could be pulled out of the whole thing. It's $750 or some dollars. So there's a significant potential that could happen to people there. They also, individuals are in two to three times greater chance of having that happen from the standpoint of getting ill. And so the thought process there also is the same thing as what was on H4 from 1013. It's just, there would have to be a space for that. There would have to be staff dedicated to that situation. Those individuals would be out of the trip. They could take out other individuals around them. They would be out of the trip. And again, it was going back and trying to figure out how to do this based on the rules that existed at the time. But this most significant rule still hasn't changed, which is unvaccinated students have to be quarantined. And that's not changed. That has stayed with the guidance, and the new guidance refers explicitly back to that point, that out of a school context, unvaccinated students have to be quarantined for 10 days if they are close contact or if they're COVID positive. Now, COVID positive, anybody can be, but close contacts is really where it impacts a person. A vaccinated child could be positive, and an unvaccinated child sitting next to them would be wrapped into it, and they would be out of the trip, or in a quarantine room. So the objective here was to, when we're free of all of this stuff, offer a trip that, because we had a pandemic that stretched many years, there's going to be many kids who, because the pandemic went these 24 months or 2.5 years at this point almost, would want to be doing that. And the trip could also have elements to it that this trip didn't, because they're older and there's more opportunities for things maybe that we could do with older children. So we would run a trip for any and all kids who are affected. Some families may not have felt comfortable participating in a trip because of the pandemic, but now they may feel comfortable. So that trip will probably have a lot of children, young adults going on it. But it seems like that option, given the circumstances, will give people a better experience than potentially having one that has all of these constraints. And staffing a situation like that is very difficult. So that's also been a consideration. All of those things, and I just won't go through all of them here, but they all are still in play. The venues can decide for themselves still. The conditions can still change. There really hasn't been much of a change for the reasoning for the trip being run as it is.
I mean, I understand some of the logistics part, because I know like they rent out the whole level. I have people that stay on there, and I don't know if rooms are necessarily available on at the hotels, or I don't know. But the other thing is, if we're doing this as a fall trip for ones who cannot make it, are you still allowing the fundraising to happen for them, and things of that nature? Because the last payment was also January, if I remember correctly from.
Yeah, we would find a model that works. The two trips, usually popular times for DC are in the November kind of range, or in the late spring range. So this would be structured as a November trip, and there would be the same kinds of opportunities for kids to find ways to help find their way onto it. Also looking, given the pandemic, there may be some opportunities, maybe some other funding mechanisms that I could use, because many kids have suffered under the pandemic. There may be some opportunities for grants or other donations. So I think we'd be able to run a trip that was very cost effective and friendly to families, that had all of the things that they want to do and even more, without these potential constraints and issues that we don't really have much control over.
Go ahead.
Does anybody else want to go?
I will ask it just a clarifying question. So there would, I got a little lost here. There would be a second trip for?
There would be a trip at the high school level for all kids. That would be, over the period of the pandemic, we've had a lot of kids that, even kids that were in a vaccinated status, their families may not have felt comfortable. So, as we move out of the pandemic, thank God, or hopefully, as we see things are kind of lifting, hopefully that will be lifted between, now and the summer, which I hope it will. Then we would have much more freedom with the trip, and the people, and each student from the high school could participate. And we've got a couple of years of kids that, that would probably jump into that, as well as some older kids that may want to participate as well. So it may give us a way of actually remodeling the trip in a couple of ways too. And like I said, with older kids, you can do some additional things. So, it'd be a fantastic trip. It's just, you want to get free and clear of all of this stuff that could prevent it from being good for the participants.
So the reason I ask is because when I went on the 8th grade trip, we were broken into like groups of 4. Is it still the same format?
Yeah, they're in quads.
Gotcha.
And those rooms are blocks. And that's why when you do, this has to be, those payments come in at certain iterations. And when those things are reserved, they're reserved in these large blocks.
Yeah.
So it's not easy to add. Right now, those blocks would, are set. They're not going to be together. They would be pretty far apart. We're not in the same hotel or things like that. This tour company can't add people right now. I don't think anyone can at this point. That's one of the things about the pandemic, which was a miserable piece of it.
And just to clarify, our sophomores did go. So it's the freshmen who did not get to go, and then the 8th graders.
Yeah, and some that may not have gone just because they weren't, there was one class deeply affected in this class. So it'd be 2 groups plus anybody else who just would want to go in the high school level, for instance, they'd be able to do that.
Well,
yeah, so oh my goodness, fine thoughts. The reason for me asking if whether it still breaks down is because I think there's a concern of kids not being with kids in their own grade, and that's a valid concern. I have the same concern. And so if they're broken down into groups, is there a way that those groups they remain with their grade and specifically kids in their class?
Well, I mean, in the trip, they are broken into quads, but they also interact with a larger group.
Right.
In this trip, they would be broken into quads because generally that's how it's done, you know, from a rooming perspective, but they would also be able to interact with the group. The pandemic gave us a tough set of circumstances, and, you know, running the trip, people who made the choice, people made choices about what to do for a variety of reasons, understandably, and those choices ended up dropping us into different, constraints. So that, this trip was functioning under constraints. The same types of constraints that our school district functions, one, and I understand the vehemence and the feelings around it. Even now, an unvaccinated student is still going to have to be quarantining for those 10 days. That hasn't gone away, even in school. That's still the situation. If it's I don't mean in school, if it's an in-school contact, I mean, even if you're a student in school and you're at a party or something out there, that out of school stuff, if for unvaccinated people, still then requires a quarantine period of time. That hasn't changed yet. So that affects all of these different things. It affects sports, it affects all of these things still. And when that's gone, there is much less chance of that impacting a student negatively, obviously, if it's not in effect. But right now it's still.
I think though, I think his question was more toward when they have the quads together. Sometimes like they'll have 3 of the rooms together when they go to visit. So they'll have like one person with the 3 groups. I think that's more of what your concern was.
Well, that and traveling to different, traveling to this museum, I was with, my grade, and traveling to there, I was with my grade. And walking in the hotel, I was with my grade, people I knew, and I was comfortable because I was with people I knew. So that's more my question. And you're spot on but I also understand your answer, which is there's a lot of things out of Tolland Public Schools control once they get there, based off of if things shut down or they impose mandates or whatever.
Right. Well, and what you're describing is true. It's a frustrating and sad situation. But this is not, there isn't really a difference right now with respect to that dynamic, and that dynamic was one of the single biggest issues.
Thank you.
Yeah. Griffin, you have your hand.
I think the biggest issue I have kind of with all of this is we're basing a lot of these decisions just on what might happen. And I think the biggest obstacle we had back in October when we talked about this was the vaccine mandates. Well, those are now being lifted. And while I understand that we have this trip plan for the future, it doesn't really help the kids today. The 8th graders, they want to go with their friends. They don't want to go 2 years from now or 1 year from now, because maybe their friends then, their parents might say, well, you went in 8th grade, you're not going again. It's not a cheap trip, as we all know. So that's just kind of the thing I'm having. Like, I just feel like we're not really looking at what this is doing to the kids who can't go. We're saying to them, you're not vaccinated, therefore you can't go. I understand that we do have some obstacles to overcome. If vaccine mandates suddenly get put back into place and you can't walk into a restaurant in DC without having a vax card. But I mean, I feel like all the emails we've gotten from people, it sounds like parents are willing to take this chance. They're willing to help. They're willing to chaperone. They're willing to be a quarantine parent, if you will. And at the end of the day, I don't think we can really say right now that, yes, unvaccinated kids can get COVID, but I think we all know that vaccinated kids can get COVID too. There's probably a 50-50 chance of whether you're unvaccinated or vaccinated. And that's where I just have a really hard time. And I'd like to see us research a trip, call the company. I mean, people are jonesing for business these days. I mean, will Destinations Unlimited really not want to put together another trip if they can do it for whatever our fee is that we pay to them? Because I mean, honestly, how are we testing all these kids? Are the kids being tested every morning?
No. It would be that if you're showing symptoms.
Okay,
the
so the- is the
opportunity to
chaperone-
test. And it's not about the vaccination, it's about the quarantine. It's about the mandatory unvaccinated quarantine. And the businesses can still choose, and this can still go in a different direction. Nothing has really changed with respect to the dynamics, and we have asked the company about timelines, and that's what we're kind of stuck in now.
Okay, so they're saying there's absolutely no way to plan another trip.
That you, well, not in this timeline, that's the thing. And, and if somebody has a medical issue or need, that the trip has always modified for a medical, if there's a medical note, somebody cannot be vaccinated because of a medical condition, those all fall under the kinds of things that you would follow through. And that's all part of the pandemic plan. And that's part of the exceptions that people can have. But if it's not a medical condition and it's a choice not to vaccinate, that has an issue. That's how this gets played out across this entire spectrum of things. If somebody is in a situation where they're unvaccinated and it's, out of school contact, it's still a 10-day quarantine. Those dynamics exist. We can't just add people to the roster of chaperones either. There's cost to that. The rooms have to be together. There has to be more dollars spent for those people that are going to do that. And those could be dollars wasted if somebody ends up getting quarantined. If somebody shows symptoms, we have to ask them. If they refuse to do anything about it, we have to presume them positive. And, people, the problem is, I don't want it to be this way either. I mean, the pandemic has these conditions, and I can't say we're just going to ignore them.
But it sounds like parents are willing to either A, take the risk, or B, take the monetary risk of being there as well.
We don't have the logistics to, that would, a person, so I'm not even sure how that would play out with taking the risk. The thing is, maybe they're taking the risk, but the other people that go along with the trip would also be impacted. It impacts everyone. They may, if that's the choice, that choice impacts other people negatively. So, it's the way this is laid out for the rules, if it's a medical situation where they cannot have it, then they can go, and we have, like any other medical situation with a medical note, that has to be followed, and of course would be for any condition of that kind. There can be medical exemptions, but without a medical exemption, that isn't something that would impact the entire trip.
Do you know how other districts are allowing unvaccinated kids to go? How are they doing it? I guess would just be my.
Well, as far as other districts that are doing this, I know a lot of districts didn't have any trips at all because, in this district, people that were vaccinated had asked about these trips, saying, if I made the choice, why can't we run this trip? People have asked a lot of things about this. No matter what they're doing, that doesn't change the quarantine condition. Maybe they're banking that situation will be different, in the near future, but they did not abandon that in their most recent guidance. And those logistical and those issues would still exist. Those individuals would still be in a situation where they'd have to quarantine. Somebody would have to drive 7 hours or whatever to pick them up, or they would have to spend time in a room with somebody monitoring them. That person would have to be okay with that. We'd have to get, everybody you bring is going to have a place to be, which adds to the cost of that. So it's just got a lot of, the easy thing to do, I suppose, is well, it's not easy. You can't really ignore the dynamics of this. I'm not saying you would, but one can't. The rules and conditions exist, and we would have to work in those rules and conditions, which is what we're trying to do. And I've talked to, I'm trying to make sure that everybody who's executing this is also in a place that they feel like that's workable for them. So, it's terrible. I hate that the pandemic has put us in a place where these kinds of things are part of the picture. I'm hoping that we can really do a wonderful trip next year, and people can participate in it, be even more robust than this one. This one has a high chance of people having a lot of difficulties, and there's no way for us to predict anywhere along this timeline what would happen. The situation changed at least 3 or 4 or 5 times in the timeline of this trip, so it's impossible for us to predict. the conditions that even DC would be.
Are you going around the room or
Well,
do you want me to?
I know you had your hand up from the beginning, so do you want to go now? Because Jacob has.
Do you see my hair on fire? All right, I'm gonna try to remain calm. I should have fought this more back in October. And that was very difficult because of the mandates in DC. I get it. I talked to my friend down in DC. They're lifted. It's like freedom. They don't have to show their vax cards at restaurants. They're open for business. Their travel protocols. If you stay in Virginia, which I think we do, you don't have to test because you're only going into the city for 24 hours. So the only time students would be testing is if they are symptomatic. I have the protocol from Middletown for their out-of-state field trips. They don't require vaccination. There is a quarantine protocol. That's still a legitimate thing. I think there are plenty of parents, and I think we got an email from a teacher that would be willing to volunteer. I didn't know the name of the company, Destinations Unlimited. If they can't add to this trip, I'm sure that they could plan a new trip the exact same week. Because in talking to parents, these kids want to go with their friends. They could hop on a train and go themselves. I mean, this is just reminiscence of prom from last year. I mean, there's no compromise. All right, calm down. So yeah, Ellington's doing their trip. They planned it from the beginning. Other districts have canceled their trips. And I know this is going to be wildly unpopular, so please vote me off the island. If all the kids can't go, I don't think anyone should go. I think it's wildly unfair, and it sets people up for disappointment and exclusion. And I know you argued, no discrimination to the legal sense of the word, but I think it's discrimination. So with that, I'll go back to my ask from points of information. I would like to ask the board, it might just be me, because I'm not the boss. I would like to ask the board to direct the superintendent to allow for these kids to go on this trip.
I personally think that there are logistics problems, and I also think there's just an aspect of the financial for these students. Some people, if you want to say you want to include everybody, that's like $800, and even if you can supposedly whip up another new trip, when are they going? April?
I mean, the idea that they usually need a timeline of October through even now to execute the one we have. So directing me to do something that I
Because
may not be
we
able
meet
to
in the
execute
fall.
is.
I'm trying to go on that.
And we
timeline.
do allow field trips. This one is extending far enough that, that the time that no test, negative test when they leave will cover the entire period of time. We also allow field trips, overnight, as long as they don't go so far that a negative test would cover.
But I just want to talk about the timeline in terms of, we meet in the fall, to discuss the trip. Allowed fundraising opportunities with butter braids, and it's a hot topic sell. I mean, I just kind of jokingly put it on there, and it was half the trip that I got in butter braid funds, which is great, but you're still looking at $800 for a trip coming up, and I want to say, what is it, April that you guys go?
May 3rd.
May 3rd, so you're still talking May 3rd, if you can even plan a new trip, because I know that, looking at it, you block out the hotels, you have the chaperones on each of the corners. You probably could talk to it more than I can. But you have your school district in a box is essentially what you do with the buses, the restaurants, and you do all of the logistic sides of that. I don't think that you can come in here and just say, plan a new trip, let's get it done, and think that there aren't children who aren't going to be able to afford it. I mean, it's $776. Not everybody has $776. We need to go to DC.
We're
Let's
5
try.
months into the planning, trying to do it in 2 months. I don't think the trip would, I don't think that first of all, the answer I've been getting is that they can't do that. So the thing, and again, it is not about the vaccinations in the situation, it's about the rules. It's about the quarantine rules. who we'd have to assign, how people can get knocked out of the trip. And, getting into it with someone down there, if they're unhappy with the situation, that these are all things that, I'm responsible for the safety of the entire trip, whether people, like what we're doing or not. If we were going to run a trip, there were conditions that had to be on it, and they were described in the pandemic plan. I don't love the situation either. Vaccinated parents calling me saying, why can't this trip run? I have made that choice. My family has made that choice. Why can't this trip run? So we ran the trip. Other places, I can't comment on what they're doing. I can tell you that given what we assessed about that could be highly problematic. People could lose their money. People could be quarantined and isolated. We'd have to reassign people off the trip, which would take eyes off of the other kids that were on it. So these are all the reasons, and I realize it's a very, I wish we weren't in a situation like that, but these are the rules, and it's not about, again, whether someone's vaccinated or not. It's about the logistics of over unvaccinated quarantines, and that has not lifted. That is not different. But that was the big thing before.
I mean, I do like the idea of having a fall trip, to be quite honest, and opening up to the freshmen that did not get to go, having the 8th graders go, because I think there's planning time to get it done and do it well. I just feel like it's very forced in a 2 months timeframe saying, okay, pay $800 and go. And I think you're still going to be excluding children. You want to say that you're not, but you will be.
So we'll exclude everything.
That's where my head is at. Jacob, you had your hand up.
Yeah. So the mandate for the quarantines, because that's kind of what I see as the big challenge to this. I'm not really concerned about local mandates or businesses putting them back up in place. I was in Boston over the weekend. They supposedly have a vaccine passport system. No one ever asked me for mine. Businesses did not care. They're not going to pay someone to go check your cards or whatever, not with the labor shortages that they have. The big concern I had was with the quarantine requirements. So that's in place by the EHHD, is that correct? That's not.
No, that's still existing from DPHC, SDE. I mean, EHHD would be the local enforcement, or the local health agency. But
statewide.
that rule for unvaccinated quarantine periods and quarantine is still there. It even is referred to in the 2 new documents that were put out. It refers explicitly back to that document that talks about that quarantine. So I was, that's still there.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I'd like to see if we could do a bit more research into what they are doing. I mean, maybe what they're doing really isn't feasible, not advised. Maybe it is. But at the end of the day, it's not my trip. It's the 8th grade class's trip. It's a lot more important to them. I just want to make sure that we're receptive to their concerns and at least looking into the matter. Maybe we look back at it and say this just isn't going to work, and what you're saying is correct. But I just think that we need to at least investigate what other districts are doing. Would be my 2 cents up on that matter. See if we could make it happen.
Three of you didn't have any words of wisdom? No?
I just think it's a tough situation. I mean, there's a lot of kids, like a lot of classes lost. I mean, our current, right, talking about the current freshman year, they didn't have the opportunity.
Not at all.
I think we definitely need to get creative. I like Jacob's idea of continuing the conversation for sure. I'm trying to get creative so we can be as inclusive as possible for all of our students. This entire thing has been ever evolving, right? So we don't know what the quarantine requirements will be, down the road. So maybe there's an opportunity to get creative so we can be inclusive of all students. I definitely think the compressed timeline would be difficult, like you were talking about. We all want the kids want this, and it's something that they look forward to. And some of our folks that missed it, it's something that they missed out on. So somehow we have to get creative to get these young adults or students an opportunity to enjoy that experience. So I think we should just continue the conversation for sure.
I
I think it's tough too. You know, I feel for everybody involved. My son was a 8th grader last year. He didn't go on the trip. My other son was a 5th grader, didn't go on his Boston trip. So they definitely both missed out on the experience. You know, I think that's been this pandemic, right? A lot of our children have lost things. My heart breaks for the kids who won't be able to go. And I keep thinking in my head, is there a way, could parents bring their children, assume the transportation, assume the lodging, but then the children could participate in the activities? I don't know, but then they could still be contact traced, right? What about the other children who are vaccinated? What if they are exposed? Now they are quarantined. Are we then asked to refund money? Are there legal ramifications to it? I don't.
What I will
I
say
don't know.
that I've known, Newington a few years back prior to COVID canceled their DC trip, and parents did get together and they did plan their own, and they took the kids, and there was X amount of parents, X amount of kids, and I should say they did somehow the school did provide the fundraising that the student did fundraise to help go to the cost of the trip. That was something that happened. And because they canceled the whole trip, they said no longer they're going to do it. And they did have a good time. And it wasn't, I don't know how you would be able to integrate that into the school one, but you would have to have a bunch of parents willing to take on that responsibility, everything, the lodging,
Well, parents don't have to follow, that their choices about what they do and don't do within their own families gives them some flexibility that if we see an ill child, we don't necessarily have. So, if a family wants to run its trip, it would be very difficult to run it in parallel because of these are coach buses. They go all to these different places. There's some availability questions. These are large groups. So, individuals may find that frustrating.
yeah, but if a family wants to take a week out, take their children and go down to DC and happen to go with someone else's children, and they say, this is what we're gonna do. And I think they even pulled enough that they did their own busing, they did their own.
Well, they can definitely do
everything.
it. I'm just saying interfacing with this trip would be difficult. Trying to match up would be difficult. But if they're sick,
So I guess I'm looking for the compromise. Maybe we can go for a directive to just look into it, see what we can do. Griffin is the queen of task force. Task forces, maybe want to form a task force. I think other districts also have waivers. If you test positive for COVID, parent will come down and pick them up immediately. Risks I think that some of these parents are probably willing to take. I don't know, looking for a compromise. Other districts are doing it.
Do we have a waiver? Can I be?
the good news
That's what I would love.
the hard part about it is the presumed positive piece of it. So if I'm asking our staff to then say, well, young Mr. Will, would you test, this is something, we'll have you walk through it. They say no. Well, okay, you seem to have symptoms, presuming you're positive. Mr. Willett, will you please drive 7 hours to pick up your child? Why? Did he take a test? It's negative? No.
If they sign a waiver, it's fine.
Okay, it's fine, but you're taking out the entire factor of the kinds of interactions that could happen with this trip between people that could become very frustrated with each other and the quarantine dynamic. So, this trip was designed way back, and there are some things that are different now, but that quarantine piece is the single biggest issue. And that getting into it with somebody and they sign a waiver, if, that individual, that could create a situation that would also be difficult. I would be happy to do anything you want me to do. It's about what we can actually execute. And it's never been about me. This is about the trip, the whole structure of it, taking into account all the considerations with respect to what could happen, trying to create a situation where the kids can get the full experience without having a chance of having their money thrown completely away, which is this alternative trip that could occur. You know,
I think we need to go forward with that alternative trip, because I think even for the freshman class that did not get to attend, I think that that's important to have an offering of a trip, and whether or not they decide, because they're already moved on, then that's something that happened, but they still need to have a chance to go, you know?
I agree.
just-
I mean, I want them to go. I want them to have a wonderful experience. You know, I wouldn't mind bringing a group down. I used to run these trips, whether they're vaccinated or not. Personally, I would bring a group down, but I can't. This situation by itself has been a very difficult one to work through, and the dynamic that causes the most difficulty is still a big player in the situation. You know, and I wish it weren't. I can understand why people didn't run these trips at all, which is the majority, a very bad, very large number of districts did not run it at all. And I can understand that, but.
You've been very quiet. What are your thoughts?
Well, I personally feel like we would need to hear from the people who are spearheading the trip. But Dr. Willett is sitting here as our superintendent, but he's not going on the trip. He's not coordinating the trip. He wouldn't be the one responsible if somebody needed to quarantine or didn't need to quarantine or notify parents. What if an adult on the trip tested positive? And that, I mean, I just personally cannot imagine coordinating such a trip with that number of children. And then add in the quarantines. Logistically, I don't know how it would work. And
Well, and to be clear, when I say personally, I don't mean that. I mean, I things directed to do, try to help every way I can. But, I don't think it'd be appropriate to put people that are planning a trip up here because it's too much, it's answering for things that they don't answer for. Whether they agree or not, I think it's asking too much to do that to someone who's just trying to run a trip. So if anyone wants to blame, it should be me that you blame for this, but the people that, I do have to support every aspect of why this was done the way it was done. And I wish the pandemic hadn't been part of it. And I don't think it would be right to put, trip organizers on the hot seat for this. I don't think that, in my opinion, isn't right. So, any vitriol should be directed at me, but the reasoning behind this is to try to prevent people from having a miserable, experience and have a lot of a lot of potential issues with the requirements that we have right now. And I would love to just ignore them and maybe that's the modus operandi, but but that's not what I can do. I mean, I can't ignore these dynamics and leave people in tough situations and potentially have it be miserable. And again, this was planned a long time ago. The timeline in this is not, you can't turn on a dime with a trip of that size. And so, with its duration under the conditions that we had, this is what we're able to do. And now that we're in a different situation, we're 2 months from that trip leaving, and it takes at least 5 months to get to this point, and it's 4 months to get the final deposit. Trying to make that happen in 2 months, that's probably, we've been told we can't really add people at this point.
well, no, I wasn't blaming, I'm not blaming.
I'm not saying that, I'm
anybody,
just kind of
and I'm not-
circling it back.
Yeah, I'm not directing any anger towards anyone in particular. My point was just that there's a lot of ins and outs to a trip like this. And you're right, perhaps putting the facilitators of the trip on the spot is not the answer. And I'm just trying to say that we sitting here do not understand all of the ins and outs of such a trip. And I feel like I couldn't weigh in unless I knew and understood that, that's all. And that's why I've been quiet. Pretty much.
It's good to hear everybody. I think everyone had a chance to, I think you did, right? Yes. You
I think
did.
so.
You're the only one that I didn't have a name written down, but I think you did.
I had asked questions prior, so I'm almost there.
Well, do you have anything?
No, not really. I'm okay. I obviously, I want to get everybody who wants to go on a trip, I want to get them on a trip. And so I think I agree with Jacob, let's investigate this and let's figure out, if it doesn't happen this year, let's figure out how to make it happen next year. And that might require a lot of work from a lot of people, but I want to get these kids a trip somehow, some way. So that's where I'm at right now. I just don't know how that happens.
Yeah, no, I think that that's where everyone's pretty much, you know, like you said, I don't think it's gonna be feasible or logistically wise that we can get them together in 2 months to do this. I do think having that fall trip and starring that to know that that is something to look forward to for those freshmen that did not get an opportunity. You're giving kids opportunity that did not get to go. I think that opens it up also to people who didn't get a chance, and they're still not stopping parents from collaborating. I mean, I don't know how they did it, but they pulled it off, and the kids had a blast, so. Go ahead, Chris.
My only thing would be, I'd still want to contact Destinations Unlimited. I have the itinerary here from the 2019 trip. It's identical to the one that's being planned today. I think the only thing I noticed was they are staying at a different hotel, still in Alexandria, but everything else is. So I'm not saying Destinations Unlimited doesn't do a great job, but my guess is they can do this like the back of their hand. So I would just like to reach out to them and say, what are the ramifications of adding 40, 50 kids? Is it completely unfeasible? And can it not be done? That's my only thing is I would want to hear it from them and, probably really, I guess in the next week, if they say it is absolutely not going to happen. And then I would, if I was a parent, I'd probably reach out to them myself and be like, what can we do? Can I have your itinerary? Can I plan my own trip? So that would be my only thing. I get what you're saying about the money, but I think everybody kind of knew it was a possibility. So I think if you're going to pay for it 3 months ago, you probably are going to pay for it 2 months from now also. So that would be my only thing, just to kind of let's really double and triple check from this company that there's absolutely no way to add any kids. If there is, then we look into, okay, what would we need to be able to make this happen?
So
From our
we've
town
had
school
direct
staff.
communications with this company, and that is what they said. If you'd like, I mean, I can probably get an email, from them or something, but that is the communication we've had. I can do that. Again, as people mentioned, parents can run their own trip. They don't have to answer to some of the, there are things a family can decide. Certainly. The only thing I would say is, interfacing with a trip like this, where they're going places on these coach buses, might be frustrating for a family. And I say that because I don't want to see people having a really miserable, frustrating situation. And we generally don't have groups mixing.
No,
Yeah, if say 50 kids are at, if we're stuffing 4 kids in a room like it was a few years ago, that's 12 and a half rooms needed. If the hotel is fully booked or even 98% booked, I don't think 12 rooms is enough. And then we have to look at right next to it, and then the one next to that. And odds are they're booked because other schools are going and rescheduling trips and all this. And so that's off of pure guess. But again, I think we can't determine anything here tonight. We will accomplish nothing here tonight until we investigate and we figure out, maybe it does require a call to the company. Maybe it does require a few weeks of communication with Dr. Willett and this person and that person to figure out how we can bring it together by April or May or whenever it is. But that doesn't happen tonight. And so I think moving forward, let's investigate it diligently and give it its fair shake. But again, nothing, sadly, nothing. No decision.
One more thing.
Yep.
I promise. I can tell I'm not going to win. I guess I kind of came in here expecting not to win this battle. So I'll just finish with one of my favorite quotes. Establishment women get angry. Activists break the laws. Activists change the laws. So I requested board policy 5150 be added to a policy agenda that is field trips. It hasn't been updated since 2007. So
now is that on the tracker?
Oh, Tony added it. You saw my hair on fire.
Jacob.
Yeah, I'll make it quick. Again, I'll just reiterate, I'm all for looking into it. Love to see what other towns are doing. And if it can't happen in the spring, I think we really need to do everything we can to make a backup trip better than what we normally have, and incorporate student ideas to improve that trip. I don't know.
I like that idea. That's a
Yeah.
good suggestion.
I think that
Yeah.
we're fully capable of that.
Okay.
I think we would. I think it would be a fantastic trip, but and I
I love
understand the circumstance. Yeah, I mean, and we have a lot of people with a lot of experience with it, and I think it would be an amazing trip. I mean, unfortunately, I feel like it's just, this situation automatically puts people at odds. I mean, you can rewrite any policy you want. The policies, they don't have that in it. The policy does not have the requirement that unvaccinated students quarantine in it. And if the DPH puts it back, no policy that you write or rewrite is going to do that. So I feel like what I am sad about is this has been a difficult situation all around. I would do everything I could to try to help. This is, I'm very sad about the whole thing. But the reasons why this is done the way it was done are solid reasons. It's not done haphazardly or with any thought about how this thing could go wrong and be in a bad situation for the kids who are there. And we can create a trip that's going to be hopefully free of any of these issues and be very robust rather than sort of, casting stones. I think it's just a very difficult time. There's a timeline here that was not great about how this could be, how this had to kind of fall down. And, I'm sad about how it has fallen down, but I think we can put that energy into making an amazing trip, or we can spin wheels about how to make something that's gonna, be some half kind of thing, which I don't think will ultimately be really that satisfying anymore. So, I think the energy could go into making an excellent, amazing trip for next year. And in my personal opinion, that is what we would want to do here, is just make an incredible trip next year for the kids that, for a variety of reasons may not have been able to participate.
And I would like to see the students involved in picking places, because, I mean, even their itinerary, just for what they do, I mean, you're only seeing the tip of the iceberg down there, and there are so many cool, awesome places that, that's not on there.
Well, and you
So-
can also do things like interface with some elected official. There's a lot of opportunities for kids when they're a little bit older even. But
Final note, one of the things we did in DC when we went for DECA, so this wasn't a class trip, this was a group of 9 to 10 kids probably. We were able to sit down and have like a 30-minute conversation with one of the senators from, still a senator, Chris Murphy. No matter how you feel on one side or the other, sitting down with a senator at 13 years old in their office, and walking in that Senate building, that's a really cool feeling. And so, Jacob, I agree. If we can give those, like I would have chosen that to do. I don't care who the senator is. I get to go see a United States senator. That's cool. And so, giving the kids a little bit of a choice, I like that. Shoot, let's give them a lot of the choice, all of the choice.
Okay, so I think that rounds up the DC discussion. Let's move on to the joint town council board of ed discussion. Are you sharing the FFC, the one pager?
Dr. Will, do you want to share it, what we have so far? Yeah, that's fine.
we'll just take notes then. Sure, we were going to do that piece, so this will just take.
I'm not sure what else. I mean, tomorrow is our reminder to everyone. Our meeting is tomorrow with the joint town council and board of ed discussion. Dr. Willett did provide our Q&A to the town council this weekend. We did get that all the questions so that they can review prior to our discussion tomorrow. And I mean, pretty much you're going to be giving an FFC update now versus
That is true.
versus the liaison reports. So
I'll
You
start
wanna
my
just-
narrative then. So
Yeah.
we looked at, we had a one pager with what I think is a very cool waterfall graph. I think it's a very good visual for seeing. So
Sure.
A waterfall graph, that we're going fancy this year.
Yes, very fancy. So basically what we did was we started with the current budget, the fiscal year 22 budget, and we broke into some categories what represented the increases. So you'll see salary, though that's the like contractual obligations, new positions, transportation, etc. To get to Dr. Willard's proposed budget for fiscal year 23. And then we showed the decreases, which were what the Board of Ed decided to remove from Dr. Willard's budget to get to the Board of Ed adopted budget. And then the plan is we've got some highlights here, and we're going to talk about why we needed all the green stuff. And then basically, why we did reduce some items to get to the 313 that the board is sending to the council. Pretty straightforward. I'm hoping that it'll just be a good visual so that they'll kind of see, and we want to talk about, I think we're going to add to this. That was the only thing we added was we're going to talk about using some of the money out of the ERF just to, kind of say to them, we understand we have this, this fund and we are going to be using some of it in order to get what, to make sure we have what we need for our students, but with recognizing that we wanted to come in at a little bit more of a percentage that was a little bit more reasonable. So,
I really do like that format of the graph. I said it at FFC, I'll just bring it up again, but one thing that the graph does show, it's not a bullet point, but maybe it should be, is just how much of the increase is contractual. I think that'll be definitely something that we need to emphasize. As that does explain the reason why you're starting out fairly high. I just thought of that initially at FFC, so I thought I'd add that.
Dr. Willard, are there more words where those 3 dots are?
Say again?
Are there more words where the 3 dots are?
Yeah, it's probably bargaining unit. It says
Oh, okay.
bargaining unit, which is again, you're trying to crunch. What I'll try to do is based on what we talked about today. We can extend to 2 pages because we do a pie chart. Then I can make these go straight. And once they go straight, you might be able to see the whole thing. But what Mr. Murray's talking about, this is what you're talking about, Mr. Murray, is that that chunk is contractual.
But I think he wants it as a highlight on the bottom.
So,
Yeah, that's what he's talking about.
Or at least just.
so I can do, what'll be good is I can do the pie chart and that'll show that as a percentage, those 2 things together.
I like this waterfall graph.
Well, no, the waterfall will stay. So but in FFC, we talked about adding a pie chart so that you could see the proportion of.
Are we allotted a 2-page?
Well, we did talk about that too. And I did say, I asked Dr. Willard, I said, do you have any other slides? And he said, no. And I said, oh, in that case, I'm okay with 2 slides.
Yeah.
It could really be a
there's-
1-pager just front and back.
I mean, the purpose of the 1
Don't
page.
tell him that.
Yeah.
Because the
I
waterfall
figured we were
graph,
going with the 1 page, not multiple.
that is true. But the waterfall graph, in order to really get the full effect of it, it has to be big. So it almost takes up, I'm imagining if we printed this, it would almost be an entire 8.5 by 11. So, but I think to really be able to see it and visualize it for what it kind of what we're intending, I think we can go to 2 pages so we don't make the graph any smaller.
No, I like this. I think this is a very creative way of showing everything. I know you like the pie charts, but this is.
Let me clarify, I was asked.
He was
to
gonna
add-
take it out. Well, he had something else and I said, you know what, this little chart would be good as a pie chart. So I told him to put it in.
There's a request.
It was a formal FFC request.
No, this is great. Any board members have any questions going into tomorrow night or the waterfall graph? Or go ahead.
I want to say, is it, I know the council's still remote, but what are
It's
we?
the library room
Library, okay.
hybrid. Yes, I think
So we could,
they never discussed them being hybrid or
so
not.
we can show up.
Yes, I plan on being in person.
All right.
I am, that's where I'm at. I will be there in person. And I did mention, because they said council chambers, I said, well, if all of our Board of Ed members are coming, there is no room. So we need to go somewhere like we have in the past, and that's why they chose the library room at the actual library. Let's make that clear. Not the high school.
If they're gonna be there.
I'm assuming they're
No,
gonna
it
be
says
there.
hybrid, right?
It says hybrid.
And then they voted last
At
night
least some of them.
to do.
Oh, to
hybrid.
lift their.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
remote status, got it.
Right?
Yes.
Voted about- Okay. I'm like, I want to make sure I heard it. I'm like, she and I were both on, right? Like, confirm.
Oh, go
You
ahead.
had no. I defer to you. Go.
I spoke it up this meeting. I like the waterfall graph. Did they get the FAQ document? Because those
Yes.
150 questions are gonna be what they ask us. And I'm just looking for an improved conversation over last year because that meeting was very rough.
Yes, they did get those this weekend. Those
Okay.
were sent over to them.
All right.
I'm assuming that Lisa dispersed it, because I did send them directly to Tammy once he had it, because
Okay.
Tammy did ask for them. And I know she's gonna at least look at them, other board members. I'm not
Okay, so when
sure,
they
but
ask us
yes.
about 325,
Yeah.
they have the whole explanation as to why it went up. Okay, all right, that's all I want to know. There's something else I wanted to say, just went out of my head. Oh, they voted on hybrid meetings last night. So my guess is they'll be in person, but they could be not in person if they choose. Also, I advocated as a citizen, not on behalf of the board, to unmask our elected officials. So Lisa said she was gonna sleep on it. The council did, I think 4 or 5 of them said that they were in favor of lifting the town mandate. So hopefully we could have a meeting.
Well, here's a question. We discussed this at the beginning when we first stepped up, that there was a new sign at the, coming into the building.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
So we
why I
weren't
have a
sure
mask on.
if that was.
Oh, did they change it and not tell me?
Well, that's why.
You all didn't say anything?
I
thought you guys-
I didn't see the sign.
Well,
I didn't see the sign, but she said there was a sign. I said, well, I didn't see the sign. and I didn't get anything to confirm. So I am not gonna have Lisa come over here and tell me. Not you, Lisa, but the town manager, Lisa, that we're doing something in it, not in compliance, because she said something about it, and I didn't see it per se.
I'm already fine.
Does anybody have a picture?
There's gonna be guidance today. So is today the 24th, Tuesday, 23rd? We'll have guidance tomorrow.
It's the 23rd.
All right,
Tomorrow,
Oh, you
that's all I
took a
have.
picture?
No, Lisa.
Oh, Lisa took a picture.
Lisa, is it not?
It says a face mask is strongly
Strongly
recommended.
recommended to be
Same sign, see
worn
if the
effective
big
tomorrow.
Well, I think it's
Generic
effective,
sign.
right.
Effective
Tomorrow.
tomorrow.
It doesn't say a date on this.
On this.
Well, we got a email.
Not that it matters, we're gonna get through our meeting, let's just go, okay? We're not 6 1/2 So, any questions in terms of the joint meeting for tomorrow?
I have just one more thing.
Go ahead.
We talked about in FFC about the table, it's in the FAQs about the technology. And I don't know if you talked about it when I stepped out, but.
Oh, she said to add that to the bottom of the highlights, that they're gonna add that as a
Yeah,
bullet.
we talked about that because it talks about the 5-year plan of each Chromebook / MacBook to understand that in our recurring budget. So that was a big conversation.
No, I think that's important to come across because we did shift over a lot, taking out of that account. And we will have to add that into our budget.
Mhm.
So
Right.
it's, it's a big elephant in the room, but we have to address it.
Mhm.
So I do think that's important, and I like the idea of making that a bullet. And if you need to, well, we have 2 pages, we're good. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay, so I think we're good with that. So let's close off and go to the committee and liaison reports. So, FFC, you're off the hook.
No, I
Unless
have
there's
a
something-
couple of ads. So we just had our meeting right before this one. We did our usual, we looked at Appendix F, the budget to actual. We talked a little bit about the audit report, and we're gonna kind of go forward. We're gonna talk about some of the FRC and the lunch, and we're gonna look at some numbers, maybe, once or twice a year, just to make sure everything's good there. And I just wanted to give the board an update on the town council, the capital budget public hearing. Sorry, I don't remember the exact date. It was a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
But I had zoomed in and I was planning on speaking, but it ended up being a very, very, very long meeting. I don't know, I did not make it to the public hearing part. So what I did was I ended up sending an email to Lisa because I just wanted to update you guys, and we had sent the capital budget that we had approved here to Lisa, which it goes to the council. But however, what had happened was, I didn't know this at the time. So what Lisa Hancock does is she takes what we present to her and she kind of moves stuff around. So one of the things I noticed on the meeting was that the infamous artillery lift was scheduled for next year using capital non-reoccurring funds from some kind of settlement. So I think we already have the cash. So what I had said to Lisa was the Board of Ed actually had it in fiscal year 24 for a reason, because we had talked about possibly looking into something with the town. So I just wanted to say to her, I appreciate you pulling stuff out, but that was not what we would have wanted for fiscal year 23. And I also asked, I sent it to her and the council, and I asked the council to please look at what we actually submitted. Because as you guys, I'm sure all remember, we talked a lot about classroom upgrades, science lab upgrades, stuff that was going to directly affect the kids. And all of that kind of got pushed off. So I said, if we actually do potentially have some capital funds that you maybe were going to use for this artillery lift, could we please, or articulating, sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
It's
not her fault.
No, it was called an artillery lift 2 years ago.
And it's an articulating.
Okay,
It's
we
not her
thought it
fault.
was funny 2 years
We've called it all
ago.
kinds of things.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I asked them to look at some of the other things that we had as more, or like more of the immediate future. And then just to also let you guys know what they did was, or what she presented to the council, which none of this gets approved until the budget gets approved. And then it also has to go to referendum anyway. We've got in fiscal year 26, the roof of the high school needs replacing. So what Lisa had done was she kind of picked a bunch of our other things, such as our classroom and science upgrades and all that. And she kind of lumped it all together because the thought was we're going to have to issue a bond for it. So if she issues the roof alone is 5.5 million. If she issues a bond for 6.5 million, we can knock off some of the stuff. So I just kind of wanted to give you guys an update, because I will admit I was kind of surprised when I was watching this meeting. I had no idea that things just kind of get moved around on, by Lisa and then possibly the council. So I have it on FFC's tracker to look at it again after something gets approved, and then see where we are and what is actually going to be removed from our list because it's going to be done. And then hopefully we won't be having the exact same conversation this October where the same stuff is still on our list. So I'm hoping that some of it will end up getting approved and gone forward with. So that's all. I just want to give you guys an update on that.
I think at least we're making headway on our capital list items, because the science wing, we had so much that we talked about and it was done, and it's just the labs and everything else. And I just feel like that list keeps making its way to the top of the pile and we keep on shoving it down. And so
We may want to get to the top of the pile, remove it,
Yeah.
and reevaluate it.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with that. Okay, so FFC communications, you are canceling for Monday's one. Curriculum, did you guys meet since last meeting?
No.
I can't remember. Everything is just.
Was that, just quick question on the curriculum, was that officially, was it officially changed or no? From the Thursday 3?
I think
We
so.
got an invite from Jen about that. Should be on March 9th.
March 9th, that's what it was, okay.
Yeah, I haven't sent out an agenda yet, so probably haven't got
Gotcha.
it official.
Okay. Am I forgetting anyone else?
Policy met today. Visitors in schools, volunteers, and transportation and bus cameras. Hot topics.
All right, so we are all set. Any other you want to do anything for
Do you want PTO updates?
the updates for PTOs?
I got them.
Since you have, well, glad I asked.
TEPTO's spreading kindness signs were awesome, so I just wanted to point that out. Thanks to the families who made the signs and to TEPTO who put them out. They have also begun selling their spirit wear online, and there's a 25% off coupon. Coupon code was sent home to BG and TIS students, but it'll also be posted to their Facebook page, and I have it if you need it. A Butterbraid order forms are going home this week with a pickup date of March 30th. The TMS PTO is running their Munson's chocolate fundraiser right now until March 10th with an April pickup. TMS night is scheduled at Yard Goats for May 12th. They're also still looking for new board members. Booster clubs, senior banners, and graduation lawn signs are for sale through April 26th. The bottle and clothing drive is scheduled for 3/26. And they are again asking for volunteers to help plan their annual Eagle Scramble, which takes place in September. And if you, again, contact information is all online, but if you have trouble finding it, just let me know.
Thank you. The task force did meet, okay.
Yes. So actually, there is a little bit of pertinent news. So they're gonna work on more of a youth-centered recommendation to the council. So that might involve a couple things tangentially related to the schools. So I'll keep you posted up on that. Also, the task force chair was directed to help write a letter advocating for the Skills for Adolescents position in the Board of Ed budget to the council. It's kind of a little bit odd because they don't approve specific things, but I think the wording around that would be something like they would like an adequate appropriation to support that class for its efforts for mental health. So just wanted to give you all an update up on that.
Okay, so they're writing to the council to just request for.
To not cut our budget.
No, I just clarification, perfect. Okay, so thank you, everyone. That was a lot. Like I said, I look around sometimes, I'm like, did someone have something? Okay, chairperson's report. I mean, honestly, I just wanted to thank, it was nice having a full room of people. You don't know how lonely it gets. Sometimes I'd say, I still have to talk to Jones. I'd like to get some of our student artwork in the back. I mean, this one picture over here is all I see sometimes. So thank you to everyone coming and to speaking online. We have no board action, and once again, we'll open up the public participation. You will have that 2-minute time limit. And once again, please list your name and your address for the record. And Dr. Willett will put on the timer for you. So at this point, anyone online can raise their hand. And if you are in the room, you can grace us with your presence over here. Come on up.
Hi, Shay Belair, 185 Coolsey Road. I just want to first thank the board members who responded to my email earlier this week, and thank you for advocating for all students to be eligible for the DC trip. So I do appreciate that, and it was great to hear you guys speaking up for all of our students. So thank you for that. I also wanted to ask, and I know Ms. Flord, you already mentioned this as well, to revisit the H4 overnight field trip practice policy. I think excluding a population based on vaccination status is exclusionary at best, and it's an unfair practice that's put in writing that I would respectfully ask to be revisited and taken off. I think that it just goes against everything that public education stands for. When you have a field trip of any type, all students should be eligible and able to go, and we should make every effort in order for that to happen. And I think that's why we're in this, where we are right now, where we have students being excluded from the trip that actually, I think at this point, should have been able to go. And I also would like to advocate for, if it's able for families to, whose child cannot go because of their vaccination status, still take their kid on that trip to DC as a group. I think while they can't go to everything with their friends and their classmates and their peers, there are opportunities in public venues where they will be able to interact. And I think that would still be a positive outcome, even though they won't get the whole experience. So thank you for your time. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Okay, no one is raising their hand online, so the floor is open.
All right, Adam Belair, 185 Cozy Road. There. So just, I want to note from the beginning, parents have volunteered to try to make this trip work. From the beginning, and I respect your decision back in October, but I think they were wrong to immediately exclude any compromise or any hybrid. That's my opinion. In the past, I understand that field trips have been inclusive and allowed people with maybe in some cases, behavioral problems, maybe parents would be able to go to allow the children to go with the group because they were, they may have some problems where they can't, they act out. I think that the number of kids, I think you're estimating is too high. I don't think it's going to be 40 to 50 kids. I think we're talking 10 to 20 kids. So you may be talking like a 5 to 10% boost in the numbers. Have you spoken to the travel company recently?
My understanding is they were asked directly.
Recently?
I mean, so
recently.
Recently.
But just
So, I mean,
remember that
but
there's
I'll-
no
I'll-
back and forth, it's just
Oh, right.
discussion. Thank you.
Sorry.
No,
Didn't mean to get in trouble. What is the plan for kids who are vaccinated if they develop the flu? They get a stomach virus. You're all concerned that kids are going to get picked on because they continue to wear masks. What about my kid who's not going on the trip? No concerns for that. And just how about a hybrid trip where I take my kid down to DC? Maybe he can travel on a bus with the kids. Maybe the travel agency has provided some extra tickets and he goes with the group. I will be taking my kid down there no matter what, and he is going to all the public events with the other students. And I'm going to take as many of the families as I can. Get a group together. I'm going to go. Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else? Come on up.
This makes me nervous. I had no intention of speaking at all, but
Don't be nervous.
I know. I don't like to speak in front of people, as a lot of people are like that. But we moved to Tolland 2 years ago, and we've struggled for my children socially to find friends and become a part of the community. And a lot of it had to do with masks, and they felt like people couldn't see them smile, people wouldn't interact quite the same because they were masked. So I'm very thankful that that is ending, and I'm so happy that nobody on the board opposed to that. But I also have an 8th grader, and I really wanted to express how disappointed I am with the decision to leave out the unvaccinated kids. Because that decision doesn't come easily to families. We're dealing with a lot being unvaccinated. We don't know why we made that decision. I personally have a vaccine injured child. So we've made that decision that we're not going to get that vaccine, but now my 8th grader is paying the price. And you mentioned showing compassion towards children who aren't wearing masks or who will be wearing masks in the future. And I don't think any compassion was shown when this trip was planned for the children who aren't vaccinated. And I think it's discriminatory. And I wish that this had been thought through better earlier on, because I do understand that 2 months is a time crunch and that there's a lot to think about. But I'm thankful that several of you have decided that we can rethink it, or we can try still, because it means a lot to my 8th grader. So that's.
And I just need your name and address.
Oh, sorry.
please.
My name is Shannon Jobert, and I'm at 816 Tolland Stage Road.
Thank you. Seeing that there's still no people on the internet with their hands up. Anyone else? Nope. Everyone's looking at me like, nope, definitely not doing it again. Okay, so once again, people on the internet, if you would like to raise your hand, please do so. Because I will, once again, going once, going twice, As there's no hands, we will close out the public participation and we will move to points of information. And at this time, I will open it up to board members and Dr. Willett, if you have something to say, you can say it now.
Well, I mean, I feel it's bad to be in a situation of back and forth. A flu, a stomach virus, if they're sick, they're not the person that's unvaccinated that's next to them, even if a vaccinated child is sick, is out. So the vaccinated child is sick and has COVID and is determined to have COVID. That child, that one could be isolated, but any unvaccinated kids around that child are also vaccinated. So if they're friends and there's 5 of them, all 5 are quarantined. So it's not about the vaccination, it's about the rule about unvaccinated being quarantined. And I just think that that would be a disastrous, kind of awful situation for the family spending that kind of money. So, yeah, that's the answer about the flu, the stomach virus, things like that. Also, I understand, I'm not a perfect individual. This was this over the span of October, November, December, January, February, March, April. There's an 8 or 7 month range for this. And going back at that time, there's rules that were in place at that time. There's rules that are in place now. So, I'm not saying anything I did, I do or don't do is perfect, but the heart is in it to try to make it happen in the best possible way that was available at the time. And so, I understand there's issues with that. I would love to have us run this fantastic trip in the fall that doesn't have any of these issues. And I feel like if you try to go on this trip, these buses are going to be going in 100 directions. It'll be extremely frustrating for you. And they're not going to be, for security reasons, they can't let groups from all over the place intermingle, and they'll be going to places that, I think will end up being extremely frustrating for you. And I apologize to you for how this has happened this year. I don't see a way of making that different, and the reasons that were there for doing that still exist. So it's simply I'm trying to answer some of the questions that were posed. Explain it a little bit more.
Anyone else with a hand? I think I'm so tired. It's only 9:35. Okay. And then
There's something up with the owl cam app. You'll notice like it's just
it's quick.
sliding on Jane and Jen like this it's been like that for a bit.
It's probably
Just so you're aware.
We're frozen.
It's been driving me, it's on my top left and it's.
Yeah, no,
And
we
it's
are
really
all set, so if there's no other, go ahead.
I just, somebody brought up a great point when they were speaking with, about the masks. With them coming off, there's still going to be children who's, we're talking about making sure that children who still decide to wear their masks, that there's no bullying or there's nothing negative. There's also children who will not wear masks, who have gotten very used to wearing their mask. And I just want to make sure that, or I want to ask if we can perhaps just make sure that our teachers are reaching out to those students, checking on them. And also our staff is going to be in a new position next week as well, wearing masks, not wearing masks, with children not wearing masks. And my hope would be that the administration would check in on them as well. I recognize that we've been very careful with how we talk about health and mental health, in those capacities, but this school is their community. And I just want to make sure that we're reaching out and checking in, even though, the assumption may be they're great because their masks are off. They might not be. So we should check in on everyone.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that is, and we do have to be very mindful of that, especially because kids, 6th graders typically and below don't really understand sarcasm or nuance in a way that an older child will. So they're going to see things in TV and the news, and they might react with some, they might say things that they're just too young to be able to process. So we're just going to have to be everyone all together, families and staff, making sure everybody understands this is choice and we should respect everyone's choice with respect to the mask.
Okay, well, if no one has anything else, then I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
move to adjourn the regular Board of Ed meeting at 9:38 PM.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous.